Now, Jacqui co-presented the BBC flagship show Crime Watch for 16 years, presenting live TV appeals to solve some of the country's highest-profile crimes, and also as a Met Police detective for 25 years. She specialised in major crime investigation, was also part of the launch team for UK's first Crime Stoppers unit at New Scotland Yard. I'm delighted to say Jacqui joined us now on the phone. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
How are you?
I'm really good, thank you very much. I'm shivering, which I doubt you are.
Well, we're not shivering, but it's a bit wet and rainy here, so we're quite good temperature-wise. So we haven't got it all good, but this weekend's going to be glorious sunshine, 21 degrees, Jacqui. So there we go.
Oh, please.
Now, listen, let's go way back with you because I mean, you were in the Met at the time when I mean, if we look at the kind of TV show Life on Mars, that must have been quite difficult to be a woman around then.
Oh, yes. Oh, goodness me, yes. I joined in 1977, which was just after the integration of women into the mainstream policing. And, yes, I'm afraid I was that WPC in Life on Mars, being ribbed and taken the mickey of constantly.
Did you ever get to drive a Ford Capri, though?
Sadly not, no. I did used to drive the old Panda cars, which was always good fun, and the old the old blue vans, the blue Mariahs, but never a Ford Capri, unfortunately.
Oh, you missed out, Jacqui, just for the fun of it. Now, you went on, obviously, and people will know you best from Crime Watch, and you did that for many, many years. How do you get on Crime Watch? How does that happen?
Well, for me, it was sheer chance, really. There was a WPC from Kent did it initially, and then she left, and a couple of years later they decided they wanted to replace her. And they placed a very small advert in a national police magazine, which somebody pointed out to me, and I just thought it might be a bit of a hoot to go along and just audition, and without really expecting to get very far, to be honest. But I think perhaps because of that I was quite relaxed and just enjoyed the process.
Was it the kind of thing there were lots of people auditioning for? I mean, was it like a kind of casting, set up at a, like all the actors sitting in waiting for their call to be auditioned? Was it like that with a load of police people?
Yes, basically it was. Yeah, I think there was about 12, although I didn't see everybody. I think I was the last or the second to last to audition, and they had David Hatcher, if you remember. He was the other police officer on there for many years. He and I sort of auditioned together, and we had to read some script off an auto cue and then do some ad-libbing, and they basically said to me the next morning, right, you're on next week, live.
Crikey. I mean, that's a thing that TV presenters, it strikes fear into the heart of experienced presenters. To present TV live is a very, very dangerous thing to do.
It certainly is. I think possibly having only a week in between, I didn't get enough chance to worry about it too much. I just sort of threw myself into it, and it was a subject that I knew really well, which helps, and something that I felt passionately about. And I think if you feel that way about a subject, you don't worry so much about the medium in which you're talking about it. You just sort of throw yourself in and hope to get a good result.
Yeah, absolutely. And now your hosts on the show, you went through quite a lot of them, didn't you? Nick Ross and Sue Cook and Jill Dando.
Yes, that's right, yeah. It was Sue Cook initially when I first joined, and then Sue left and Jill joined us. Sadly, as you know, in 1999 we lost Jill, and then Fiona Bruce took over for many years. And that must have been I mean, it was a shock for the nation, but it must have been a real shock for the people working on that show when Jill was murdered. Well, as an experienced homicide detective, I delivered that sort of news to people so many times, but actually to get someone to walk into a room and tell me was a real insight into the true meaning of shock. It was really awful. But, we had to galvanise ourselves and pull together and produce a programme. The following, I think it was about 2 weeks later, we had the next programme, and we were intent on making an appeal to try and catch her murderer, which was extraordinary. Absolutely. And was there any discussion then at the BBC to can the show? Oh, I think there was a lot of discussion about what the best thing was to do, but there was no doubt in the minds of the team who worked on the programme that we wanted to produce a show in her memory, and to try our best to sort of engage with the investigation and help in any way we could. I think to have sat back and not done anything would have been really difficult for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a valuable show, and some amazing crimes have been solved because of evidence coming into Crime Watch. I mean, and some of them come from very strange sources, I'm sure.
Yes, that's true. We've actually had people come up to the steps of the BBC and give themselves into the security on the door. It is extraordinary. I think having, seeing your own face on television is a sort of a bit of a wake-up call for some criminals, and they do actually just hand themselves in lamely the next day. But also, we've had some extraordinary strokes of luck. If you remember the very first Gulf War back in, I think it was 1990,
yep.
Crime Watch was actually transferred to BBC Two because of the news that was breaking.
Yep.
And there was somebody watching BBC Two waiting for another programme, actually got to see it when they wouldn't have done otherwise, and they ended up spotting some information about a murder, and they called in and solved it. So if it had been for Saddam Hussein, we probably wouldn't have solved it.
Good Lord, there's a story I didn't know. And you went on to do that for years, and then you went on to do other things in your life, and you kind of became, towards the end, a kind of victim of having been in the police, because you actually ended up being basically stalked and followed and had pictures taken of you by the News of the World.
Yes, it was quite a turnaround, really. It was actually happened back in 2002 when I was still a serving officer. My husband at the time was involved in the murder of a private detective, and we were put under surveillance by the News of the World. Our phones were hacked, and our personnel files from the yard were what's the word? Blagged, I think they call it.
Right.
In terms of our personal details. Yeah, and I became very much involved in the recent Hacked Off campaign to basically restore some faith in journalism and some trust back in our newspapers and media, which
yes.
suffered so badly as a result.
I mean, this was an extraordinary story, yours. For people that don't know it, you basically, as you say, your husband was involved in the investigation of a particularly gruesome murder, and then you had things like vans hanging around outside your house, and you were accused when the News of the World were asked about it. They gave the excuse that they were investigating suspicions that you were having an affair, but in fact you'd already been married for 4 years.
Yes, that was the explanation given when Rebecca Wade was challenged about it. Ultimately...
And it wasn't an affair outside your marriage. She was actually saying you're having an affair with the man you're already married to, which is ridiculous.
Yes, yes, it is quite extraordinary, isn't it? And no other explanation has been offered.
And why was no other explanation sought? Why were the News of the World, in your view, allowed to get away with that? Basically stalking a serving police officer and then making up a lame excuse for doing it.
Well, that's been the subject of investigation, which is currently going on. So it's quite difficult to comment in any detail about that. It's an ongoing issue. It may be that legally we'll never get to the bottom of it, but so it is difficult for me to discuss in any detail, I'm afraid.
No, that's fair enough. But I mean, it did change your life around, and in the end, you gave evidence, obviously, to the Leveson inquiry. Now we've had the result of that Leveson inquiry. Did it work out the way you hoped it would, or should it have gone further?
Well, I mean, certainly the recommendations by Lord Justice Leveson did in some ways stop short of what I and many of the other victims were hoping for, but we were prepared to get behind it and say, well, okay, he's actually delivered the press self-regulation again, but he suggested that it should be backed up by a body which is independent and has some teeth in law to be able to implement fines and punishments if they overstep the mark again.
Yeah.
This is what the current battle is, really. I mean, we've had some success recently in the Houses of Parliament, with all three parties agreeing that a royal charter should be instituted, which actually complies with the Leveson recommendations, but we're still a long way from actually seeing that body set up. So what space?
Yeah, and so, you know, on a daily basis now, what's your life like now then, Jacqui? You've done a lot in your life, so what's your current life like?
Well, I'm very much involved in the area of personal safety. I wrote a book actually with Fiona Bruce called Savvy, The Modern Girl's Guide to Having It All Without Risking It All, which is about sort of young women sort of setting out on their own for the first time in their life and living independent safely. And I also do work in the area of stalking sometimes as well. I still do a lot in the media, and I'm very interested and passionate about demystifying law enforcement, if you like, and criminal investigations, and making it more open and accessible and transparent to the public.
Good. Well, long may you continue, Jacqui. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Bill.
And good luck with the future.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.